Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to Talk About here on Shaw TV. We've got another interesting episode for you. We have Doug Sloan, the wine columnist in town. Doug, thank you very much for coming in.
No, it's a pleasure, John, always.
Good. Well, as it happens, you know, there's lots to talk about. We have some big news. We're going to talk about the state of the BC wine industry and the Vancouver Island wine industry and maybe some scotch and a few other things. But big news, James Cameron, the big director, just bought Beaufort Winery, which I'm down in Comox somewhere, I'm not sure where. What's going on there?
What's going on there? My understanding is that Mr. Cameron came to Vancouver Island with a commitment to producing organic produce. He and his wife are both vegan.
Oh.
And have been for a very long time. They purchased a variety of farm properties in New Zealand last year. And this year, they came to Vancouver Island and were actually hunting around Cowichan Valley and Port Alberni area, looking for properties that they could convert to growing organic produce. And in the course of their explorations, they kind of tripped over Beaufort Winery.
I heard a realtor was involved and said, hey, why don't you check this out?
There's always a realtor involved if the property changes hands. I think in this instance, Mr. Cameron he didn't set out to buy a winery.
Yes.
He set out to actually acquire properties that he could convert into some sort of organic, produce production.
Yeah.
Beaufort was a bonus, I guess, in a sense. I'm sure it didn't hurt at all that Beaufort has, carved such a respected position in the Vancouver Island winery scene.
Yeah. Now, was it for sale? Because it was started, I saw, by a husband and wife team.
Jeff and Susan Vandermolen, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't hear anything about it being on the market.
Well, commercial operation, John, is always for sale.
Yeah.
In this instance, I don't believe that Vandermolen's intended to exit the business quite so soon.
Right.
But when they first set up in 2005,
which is not long ago.
No, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Their intent was 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
And it took them 3 years to get into production and to get wine into bottles and have product to sell. And it took off really well for them.
Well, they won awards,
didn't they? Numerous awards.
Which kind of ones?
Which
kind of awards did they get?
Oh, the gold and silvers in Toronto and Canada and the California wine competitions. Double golds. They had a very creative approach to winemaking.
Well, yeah, you were with them, I think, were you not? In terms of, sorry folks, back up. How long have you had this column in the Courier?
14 years?
Yeah.
Long time.
So this winery's been around maybe 10?
9? They first contacted me probably 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And they actually had product to sell in 2008.
Yeah.
Right?
So were you their main coach or just another one?
Oh gosh, coach, no. No, I was often consulted in a very casual way as to wine stylings and what they thought might work in the market. But they don't need any help from me. They're very, very good at what they do.
Well, in a theater a long time ago, we did quite a few shows on Quadra Island's South End.
Yes.
Yes, and in a way you were the coach there.
I knew them before they started up the winery, and again, in my day job, as a retailer of beverage alcohol, wines and spirits.
For a little boutique downtown, by the way.
Yeah, in my day job.
Besides Save on Foods.
In my day job, I have a really clear idea of what people's tastes are with respect to wine. And the kinds of wine styles that they most appreciate. So in some instances, particularly with South End, with Ben and Jill, they would actually consult me as to whether or not there was enough fruit in this wine, how the acid balance worked, that kind of stuff. But again, these are entrepreneurial people, John. They don't necessarily need an awful lot of help or encouragement.
One of the things I really liked about South End was they were blending grapes with fruits. And not that, I mean, they did pure grape wines as well.
Yeah.
But they had a champagne, I think, that had some raspberry accents in it.
You were thinking of Marshwood, John.
Marshwood. Oh,
Marshwood,
okay.
which preceded South End.
Okay. Yes.
Marshwood sold, the property sold, and South End is still using some of the grapes that were planted by Marshwood.
Okay.
And they use them, and there's a lot of fruit there. They were using a lot of sparkling raspberry and sparkling strawberry.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So, Marsh End is the same real estate with a new name now. Or they added real estate?
No, Marshwood was sold to, I believe it was someone from the Pillsbury family.
Oh.
Some years ago. But that person was not interested in pursuing the winery. So they hired the crew that had been working at Marshwood to work the vines. They hired those people to continue to keep the vines producing. And most of that fruit currently is used by South End Farms.
Oh, okay. But then South End has their own vineyard as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they have there's about 6.5, 7 acres.
Yeah. Well, we have Coastal Black down in Black Creek.
Absolutely.
So we've got sort of like 1.5 on Quadra Island.
1.5.
Well, okay. The leftovers of Marshwood.
People growing grapes, yeah.
And then is Beaufort more northerly than most of the others on the island?
Beaufort, well, there's a cluster of wineries in the Comox Valley. Blue Moon, which is a fruit-based winery. Then there's Coastal Black, which is very seriously fruit-based, and they grow most of their own fruit, blackberries and raspberries primarily, blueberries too. And then we've got 40 Knots, which is almost out to, I don't know the geography too well, but when you're heading out to the Powell River Ferry, 40 Knots is the property there.
Okay.
And they went in with the intention of planting noble grapes and making Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay. Noble
grapes meaning pure from Europe?
In a sense, that's one way of putting it, John. Because of the cool climate that we work with, a lot of traditional winemaking grapes, Cabernet, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Merlot, etc. It can be very difficult to get them appropriately ripe, sufficiently ripe. So what happens if you're actually trying to make a living making wine in this climate is you plant a bunch of hybrid grapes as well. And the hybrid grapes are picked for their ability to resist moisture and mildew, and for their ability to ripen early in the season. And 40 Knots made a commitment from the get-go to stick with the noble grapes, which are, as you said, the traditional European varieties.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, trends in the industry, this blended fruit thing, I know from one of your recent columns here about the trend is blending reds, but what do you feel about the fruit-based thing, like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries? Does that have a big market potential, or is it kind of a sideline? It's cute, but...
From a local perspective?
Or both?
Yeah, from a local perspective, the wines are very well received. People know what fruit tastes like, right? And the wines tend to be a little on the sweeter side. And they are appreciated as much by people who are not actually committed to wine as a passion as they are by people who just want a glass of something nice to drink.
And affordable.
And affordable, plus or minus $20 seems to be the price point for local wines right now. But from a producer's point of view, it's much more... They can dependably ripen blueberries. They can dependably ripen blackberries. When they plant raspberries, they know they're going to get raspberries they can use. It's not always the case when they're working with grapes. And grapes are certainly more fragile than some of these other fruits.
Yeah.
And you take places like Blue Moon, again, a fruit-based winery, but they don't restrict themselves to blueberries and raspberries. They work with pears and apples and various other things. They make mead based on honey, as does Coastal Black makes mead. And it's a niche market in a sense.
Yeah.
And the difficulty, I think, will be, and you have to look at it from the perspective of the economies of scale. As long as they're working with the products they have and they're servicing a localized market, they won't have any problems.
Yeah.
They'll be able to sell everything they make.
Yeah.
When they actually try to become larger than that,
Exports to Japan.
then they have to face the fact that fruit wines internationally are not as sexy
Yeah.
as Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay and Pinot Gris.
Yeah. Good answer.
Yeah.
The blending, well, put it this way. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Your column from January the 10th, it's mentioning a Cabernet Sauvignon from Italy, Montalto Nero d'Avola, for $9.95.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't buy one. I couldn't find it. But you didn't have a big sign.
We'll get arrows in the store.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually, I wish in your store you had a corner Doug's mentions.
Oh, gosh.
But anyway, apart from that, is that typical, or is that the coming thing, or is that rare? And does that affect the trends in the market, or let's go there somewhere.
Okay, where to go with this? Within each wine jurisdiction in the world, the rules are generally something like 85% of the wine. If 85% of the wine is made from a named varietal, Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance, then the other 15% can be anything they want to put in there.
Yeah.
And they can still call it Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right.
That's pretty well industry-wide across the world. And to get more complexity out of the wines, clever winemakers take their Cabernet Sauvignon and backfill it with a little Merlot or a little Syrah or a little Shiraz or a little Petit Verdot or whatever happens to be working for them at that time.
A bit of bite or tang?
Well, each grape has its own sort of signature flavors. Cabernet tastes like black currants. Merlot tends to taste a lot like ripe plums. Pinot Noir has a tendency to taste like strawberries, maybe a little bit of rhubarb, beetroot.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for complexity in the wine, you can, by blending, get a wine that's far more complex. Now, up until perhaps 10 years ago, the focus in California was on making single variety wines. So their Chardonnay would be Chardonnay, 100% Chardonnay. Their Cabernet would be 100% Cabernet. In that way, they believed that they could actually get to a pure expression of the fruit. They began to discover that the old winemakers, the traditional winemakers in Europe, who were always putting a little something else in there, were actually achieving more complexity in wines that were more interesting. And so in California, currently, as you said yourself, the trend is blended reds. And the blended reds will be Cabernet or Merlot based for the most part. But there'll be up to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 other grapes put in there.
Yeah.
Now, the other trend in the industry right now is sort of piggybacked on the whole yellowtail Shiraz phenomenon that began maybe 10 years ago.
Yellowtail Australia.
Yellowtail being an Australian wine. When it came to market, it was very poorly received by wine critics because it was a little sweeter than they were accustomed to. Within 3 years, the wine critics were backing up a little bit and saying, maybe I actually have to realize that the people who buy wine want the wine to be a little sweeter.
In the business world, we call that money talks.
Yeah. And that phenomenon was adopted worldwide to the degree that currently the best-selling red wine in British Columbia is a wine from the Gallo stable, E&J Gallo stable, called Apothic Red.
Okay.
It's what I call a kitchen sink blend, Cabernet Merlot and whatever else goes in there, but it's made like Yellowtail. It's made with a little bit of a sweeter finish.
Yeah.
It's outrageously popular. right in behind that wine in terms of volume of sales is a little Australian wine from Hardy's. It's Riesling Gewürztraminer,
You know,
$10.
as a matter of fact, we had somebody over for dinner and they brought a bottle of that, and I didn't drink it that night, but I had it just a few weeks ago, and I saved the bottle because I'm going to get some more of that.
It's pretty tasty stuff. It's pretty tasty stuff. And $10 a bottle.
That was Hardy's something Gewürz?
Yeah, Riesling Gewürztraminer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And again, this is a wine that is consciously a little sweeter than your classic Italian wine or your classic French wine.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me, being a manager of a store is a huge advantage to writing a wine column, because not only do you can see new releases and things, but also you see the sales trends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think more than most wine writers, John, I have my feet on the ground because I know what people buy, simply because I see them buying it. It's very easy to write glowing, fabulous, poetic prose about wine that costs $85 a bottle.
Yeah.
Right? Because the wine is generally very complex and very rich.
Sure. All of us will run out and buy
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares about the rent?
No, in my own column, John, in WineWise, I try to focus on wines that actually over-deliver for their price point.
Yeah.
And if you read the column regularly, you'll notice that I usually start out at $10 and it tops out about 25 or 30.
I was just going to ask you or emphasize that point, because this one starts at $9.95 and it ends at $37.99.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But anyway, I
That's
think
what
it's
people
brilliant.
buy.
Now, one of my last questions, but we'll get to it ahead of time. You've been doing this column, you said, for 14 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now it's in the Courier.
Yes.
Every week.
Yes.
But you distribute it elsewhere, I think.
Not deliberately.
No?
No.
You have a network of people that receive it?
Oh, I have people on an emailing list that I send it to.
How many now?
A couple hundred.
Yeah.
Not too many. But they pass it on to people that they know.
But this could be the manager of the store in Telquay or something.
A lot of the people who are on my distribution column are colleagues, professional colleagues that work as retailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think to a degree, and I hate to,
Go for it.
Well, to some degree, I think the scope or the ability of my column to speak to people is limited by the fact that I typically write about wines that people can buy.
Yeah.
And those wines that people can buy are wines that are sold in British Columbia.
Yeah.
So I have people, I send my column to friends in other countries, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. And the only time they really get excited about it is when I feature wines from New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa, because they can then purchase those wines, right?
Well, wine festivals is an interesting topic. We recently, I guess, it's a while now, but a few months ago we had is it the North Island one?
North Island College, yeah.
How did that go?
Fabulous.
And how many years now?
I believe that'll be 13.
Oh.
Yeah. We're looking for another one coming this fall, I hope. It's quite an exercise in organization because it's actually put on and arranged and organized by the tourism and hospitality students in North Island College.
Yeah.
So it requires a number of committed students to actually help make it work. My friend Janelle Knowles oversees the process, but it's very complicated. Actually, and getting, until you've actually dealt with wine agents and distributors and reps hands-on, it's a little bit like herding cats.
Yeah, the logistics.
Trying to get them all in the same place at the same time can be very difficult.
How many cases can you bring?
No, it's more like, can you fit me into your schedule?
Okay.
They all have schedules and budgets, right?
Yeah.
But that one we hope to see
I'm in
again.
Portland.
Yeah, exactly. Or sorry, I'm in Argentina. You think I'm coming back for your little wine festival? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But next week,
Vancouver Island.
Vancouver.
No, pardon me. It's the
International Wine Festival.
It is VIWF.
It used to be called the Playhouse because their sponsoring a charitable organization was Vancouver Playhouse Theatre.
Right.
With the demise of the Playhouse, beneficiary, I suppose, of the Vancouver International Wine Festival, is now barred on the beach.
Oh,
So that takes place, it starts on Monday in various venues for dinners
Yeah.
and things, but the actual International Festival tasting room is open 27th, Thursday the 27th, Friday, the Saturday.
and that's a ticket thing, I think.
That's a ticketed thing. You're looking at, this year, I believe you're looking at 1,400 wines from 132 different wineries worldwide. The focus is on the wines of France. The regional focus is on the wines of France, and the global focus is on sparkling wines, bubblies.
Huh. Schroeder and Schuyler's Charton Lafleur Bordeaux Blanc, $14.99.
Quite affordable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but that's is that one of the features at the show?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, do you get a chance to go down to that?
I try.
Yeah.
This year, I will. I hope to attend on a Thursday.
Yeah.
I meet up with some friends in the Comox Valley, and we all travel down to Vancouver. And
Designated driver?
no, I'm the designated snorer in the back seat coming home.
Yeah, it's, you know, I went to just the one of them at the North Island, and, or maybe I've been to two, but it's an endurance test. You know, there's so many to try, and the food.
Well, it's certainly an endurance test if you don't spit the wines when you taste them, John. Yeah.
Oh, is that what you're supposed to do?
1,400 wines. Think about it.
Yeah. And don't forget, don't wear perfume.
Don't wear perfume and don't wear white.
Why? Oh. I still have a spot on the tie from that white night.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah. Getting back to James Cameron a bit, and you know, he was vegan and he was looking for vegan agriculture. But you know, I think there's another trend I'll run past you, and that's that wealthy people are investing in land as an investment. And you know, like Frank Giustra of Lionsgate Films owns a big olive grove in Italy, for example. And I've heard as well, like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and such, they're putting more of their money into land, I think kind of as a hedge against inflation and volatility. But I wonder, you know, if that's all it is, or are they also, well, I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
I think but there are two elements to this, in a real sense, certainly for the BC wine industry. Many of the wineries that were started in British Columbia were started by people who are now exiting the business because they're retiring.
Age.
And you find that the wineries are up for sale, and you've got to be pretty well capitalized to walk in and purchase both the property and the winery.
Yeah.
I think back almost 25 years ago, when Senator Ross Fitzpatrick started Cedar Creek Winery. He actually purchased Uniacke, which was an old winery that was there. At the time, I was convinced that Mr. Fitzpatrick wanted a nice place by Okanagan Lake. And he ended up buying Cedar Creek Winery because it was right on the lake, and it was a lovely, you know, and he built up the business grew, and he had himself a wonderful spot to visit when he came over from Alberta, where he worked in the oil patch, right? Just recently, within the last 3 months, Cedar Creek was purchased by Anthony von Mandel, who is the primary driving force behind Mark Anthony Wines, Mission Hill,
And
etc.
also the BC VQA, I think he was.
Well, he would have been involved to some degree,
Yeah.
but that was never his puppy.
Oh, okay.
No. So
Yeah.
what we'll see in the next 5-10 years are a lot of these owner-operated startup wineries changing hands.
Yeah.
And to actually purchase a winery, you're going to want to have, $8 to $12 million.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things there. Are they buying land as a hedge against inflation and volatility and Kiev and all that? Or are they buying land that happens to have a winery on it because the winery can make money? Maybe both.
Generally, the second set of owners in any given winery, particularly smaller wineries rather than corporate wineries, John, generally the second set of owners are well capitalized. They're coming out of some other industry where they've made a lot of money. And in most instances, I believe they're making lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
They'd like to have a little winery. They'd like to be able to have their own wine. I think it's really that simple. Are they buying land as a hedge against inflation? Probably, but you'd have to look at the rest of their portfolio, John.
I want to get this in before we go. I'm fascinated by Shelter Point Distilleries down at Oyster River, planning to make Scotch.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on that?
Well, currently they're producing a vodka.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the vodka is called Still Master. Still, as in distillation process, Still Master, and they're producing it. They're working on about 12 different flavors. Most of them are fruit, but there's also chocolate and maple and all of those kinds of things. If you actually visit their operation in Black Creek, you can taste their vodkas at this point.
Actually, they're not in Black Creek. Black Creek starts after the river?
I beg your pardon.
Well, I wouldn't want
Oyster
somebody
River.
driving down
Oyster
there.
River. Okay.
Yeah.
Oyster River. The old UBC property by the Oyster.
Yeah.
By
Now
the Oyster
growing
River.
raspberries as well.
Yes, they're growing raspberries. In the meantime, what they have is backlog of spirits. Scotch really should be 10 to 12 years old before it's released. My understanding is that currently their vodkas, the Still Master vodkas, are only available on premise if you visit, but they're hoping to get them out into retail this year.
Yeah, and we're just a short time left. If people want to try this, I guess they can search around in private liquor stores, but how many of these places are also now doing Winegate sales, or most of them, I guess?
Almost all of them.
Yeah.
There's a fabulous financial incentive for the wineries to actually sell their product directly.
Yeah. Is there a website that lists all of them?
For Vancouver Island, there's Vancouver Island Winery Association.
Okay.
Currently lists 31 wineries. When you and I first started talking about wine on television, 8-10 years ago, John?
Time flies.
Yeah. Not only were there, I believe there were 8 wineries in Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
But I had been to them all.
Yeah.
And I tasted most of their wines.
And now how many?
Well, 31 wineries.
Okay, 31.
There's all kinds of, they just prop up, just like mushrooms,
Yeah.
But
Well.
it's a wonderful industry, not simply because of what they do and the fact that they're producing product, but it has this huge overflow into the tourism sector.
Yeah.
As they become destination tourist wineries.
In another one of my interest areas is job creation and food self-sufficiency.
Absolutely.
And I'm so pleased to see this happening from, just the job creation alone. But anyway, we might not be able to get orange juice, but we can get wine.
I think with the sale of Beaufort, you'll see Vancouver Island wineries sort of lifted up a lot closer to the world stage because Mr. Cameron himself has that kind of visibility.
Well, that's a good place to end.
And
Doug, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Nice to see you.
Anytime.
And folks, thanks for watching. There's something called the LPR Final Report. That's a whole liquor policy reform thing, which I avoided asking Doug about, but that's a very important issue too. So thank you, volunteers. Thank you, Chaz, and thank you, Shaw, for producing Talk About. Thank you all for watching. Tell a friend. And we're on YouTube too,